Thank you for watching Amir 5858. I am Amir. I am thankful to all news resources. Following news have been reported by American, European, Canadian, Australian, African, and Asian channels, and of course, news agencies AFP, AP, and Reuters. Now the news headlines. Donald Trump immunity trial in Supreme Court and hush money trial in New York. New York court overturned rape conviction. Ukraine town Kharkiv has become a ghost town due to Russian bombardment. US and 17 other countries have appealed Hamas to release the hostages. Associated Press reported Hamas won independent Palestinian state. Israeli bombing killed 6 Palestinians in Gaza yesterday. Haiti Prime Minister resigned. A 9-member council has been formed to run the country. Mr. Blinken is in China. City entrance fee for Venus for the tourists. Now the news in detail.
Tonight, Donald Trump's historic legal battles simultaneously unfolding in multiple courts, and the stunning decision, Harvey Weinstein's conviction, overturned in New York. First, the Supreme Court takes on Donald Trump's claim of absolute immunity, hearing arguments over Trump's efforts to avoid prosecution for attempting to overturn the results of the 2020 election. The justices citing the massive implications, drawing lines between political and personal actions. Justice Neil Gorsuch declaring they are, quote, writing a rule for the ages. How long before they issue their decision? Will the case go to trial before the election, if at all? Terry Moran at the Supreme Court. The criminal trial of Donald Trump here in New York. The former publisher of the National Enquirer, David Pecker, describing payments made to Playboy model Karen McDougal, who claimed to have a year-long affair with Trump. What Pecker says happened when Donald Trump and Michael Cohen learned Stormy Daniels was shopping her story. Aaron Katursky at the courthouse. The stunning decision involving disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein. New York's appellate court overturning his rape conviction. The case that launched the Me Too movement now likely headed for a retrial. Disturbing images of the police crackdown on campus protests across the U.S. Officers tasing a protester at Emory University. New pro-Palestinian demonstrations breaking out at more schools. USC now canceling its main graduation ceremony as protesters face a deadline to clear out at Columbia. Stephanie Ramos standing by. Authorities investigating the death of a man following a confrontation with police. Body camera video showing him struggling with officers after a crash. An officer seen with his knee on the man's back as he screams, "I can't breathe." Millions bracing for 4 days of severe storms from Texas to Iowa. Tornado watches across several states at this hour. Rob Marciano timing it out. The harrowing landing at LAX. The 747 bouncing down the runway attempting to land. The pilot forced to pull up for another try. And the NFL draft just a short time from now. Hundreds of thousands of fans packing into Detroit to see who will go number 1.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David York.
Good evening. It's great to have you with us on this Thursday night. I'm Wade Johnson in for David. We begin with a historic and head-spinning day of legal drama from New York to Washington. Donald Trump and his alleged efforts to influence elections at the center of it all. At the Supreme Court, the former president's case testing the boundaries of presidential power. Trump's lawyers arguing he has absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for his attempts to overturn the 2020 election. Lawyers for special counsel Jack Smith, who is prosecuting Trump for those efforts, arguing that presidents are not above the law if they commit crimes. The justices acknowledging the case before them is not just about former President Donald Trump, but also about future presidents and the presidency itself. One critical question they're considering: whether a president can have immunity for an official act, but not his private conduct. ABC's Terry Moran leads us off at the Supreme Court.
At the heart of this case, Donald Trump's unprecedented claim. His lawyer telling the justices that presidents can never face criminal prosecution for anything they do in office that can be linked to their official duties. Absolute immunity.
Without presidential immunity from criminal prosecution, there can be no presidency as we know it.
The sheer magnitude of that claim hung over the courtroom, several justices acknowledging the stakes.
This case has huge implications for the presidency, for the future of the presidency, for the future of the country, in my view.
Whatever we decide is going to apply to all future presidents.
Trump argues that because of that absolute immunity claim, he cannot be prosecuted by special counsel Jack Smith for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Liberal justices were having none of it. Justice Sonia Sotomayor pressing Trump's lawyer on where his argument could lead.
There's some things that are so fundamentally evil that they have to be protected against. If the president decides that his rival is a corrupt person and he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him, is that within his official acts for which he can get immunity?
It would depend on the hypothetical, but we can see that could well be an official act.
It could, and why? Because he's doing it for personal reasons.
Justice Elena Kagan pointed to history.
Framers did not put an immunity clause into the Constitution. Wasn't the whole point that the president was not a monarch and the president was not supposed to be above the law?
And Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson asked if there is no accountability, what would stop a president from, quote, turning the Oval Office into the seat of criminal activity in this country?
If the potential for criminal liability is taken off the table, wouldn't there be a significant risk that future presidents would be emboldened to commit crimes with abandon while they're in office?
But conservative justices, while not embracing the full Trump argument, made the case that presidents need some protection from criminal prosecution.
Presidents have to make a lot of tough decisions about enforcing the law, and they have to make decisions about questions that are unsettled. Did I understand you to say, well, if he makes a mistake, he's subject to the criminal laws just like anybody else? You know, like he's in a peculiarly precarious position?
In the end, the court seemed to be searching for a middle ground, a line between presidents' official acts and their purely personal deeds, which could be grounds for prosecution. and they hinted they could send the whole case back down to the trial court for further proceedings.
Even if the court were inclined to recognize some immunity for former president's official acts, it should remand for trial because the indictment alleges substantial private conduct.
Yes.
Terry Moran joining us now from the Supreme Court. And Terry, the justices are expected to make a ruling by June, but they made it very clear they know exactly how high the stakes are.
And you could feel that in the courtroom. It's clear that at the end of the day here, the justices, majority of them want presidents to have some protection from prosecution, but not as much as Trump wants. And that likely means a complicated opinion, more litigation in the lower courts, and an almost certain delay of any trial in this case until after the November election. Whit?
All right, Terry, thank you. And as those arguments were getting underway, Donald Trump was in a Manhattan courtroom facing charges surrounding a hush money payment made to hide an alleged affair from voters just before the 2016 election. The former publisher of the National Enquirer, David Pecker, testifying for a third day, and prosecutors finally asking about Stormy Daniels. ABC senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky is at the courthouse.
Tonight, the former publisher of the National Enquirer testifying that even after Donald Trump became president, he still kept tabs on women who had been paid to keep quiet about their alleged affairs.
David's been very nice guy.
David Pecker telling the jury that at Trump's direction, the Enquirer's parent company bought the story of former Playboy model Karen McDougal, who claimed she had a year-long sexual relationship with Trump. Pecker saying it could be very embarrassing to Trump's campaign. He described a meeting at Trump Tower shortly after the election, Trump saying, "I want to thank you for handling the McDougal situation," then asking, "How's our girl?" Pecker replying, "She's quiet. Things are going fine." Months later, Trump invited Pecker to the White House and asked again, "How's Karen doing?" Pecker recalled responding, "She's doing well. She's quiet." And he described a phone call where top White House officials Hope Hicks and Sarah Huckabee Sanders encouraged him to keep paying McDougal.
Mr. Trump, you still like Pecker?
And then there was Stormy Daniels, the porn star at the heart of this case. Trump charged with falsifying business records to conceal a hush payment so voters wouldn't learn of their alleged affair. In the final weeks of the campaign, Pecker said he told Trump's fixer, Michael Cohen, Daniels was shopping her story. He said Cohen told him to buy it, but Pecker refused, telling Cohen, "I'm not going to get involved with a porn star. I am not a bank." Ultimately, Cohen himself paid Daniels $130,000 to keep quiet. Prosecutors say Trump paid Cohen back, falsely labeling it as legal expenses. Trump has denied both affairs. His lawyers claim any effort to bury salacious stories was to protect Trump's family. But Pecker testifying that's not what he thought. "I thought it was for the campaign," he told the jury. His family was never mentioned, only the impact it would have upon the election. David Pecker showed Trump no hostility. In fact, even though it has been 5 years since Pecker said he last saw Trump, he still considers him to be a friend. Cross-examination is just getting started, Whit, so David Pecker returns here to the witness stand tomorrow. Whit?
Aaron Katursky for us, thank you. Next tonight, the stunning reversal in the sexual assault conviction of movie mogul Harvey Weinstein, the case that galvanized the Me Too movement. A New York appeals court throwing out his 2020 rape conviction, saying he didn't get a fair trial because the judge made egregious errors. Here's ABC's Eva Pilgrim.
It was the case that sparked the Me Too movement, but tonight, a shocking reversal. Harvey Weinstein's rape conviction in New York overturned by the state's highest court. New York's Court of Appeals handing down the 4-3 decision, citing egregious errors by the judge overseeing the trial back in 2020, saying the trial court erroneously admitted testimony of uncharged, alleged prior sexual acts against persons other than the complainants of the underlying crimes, adding that testimony of uncharged crimes at the trial was unnecessary to establish Weinstein's intent and served only to establish defendants' propensity to commit the crimes charged. Weinstein's legal team happily surprised.
We knew that Harvey Weinstein did not get a fair trial.
In February 2020, Weinstein was sentenced to 23 years in New York for criminal sexual assault of one woman and third-degree rape of another. Tonight, he remains in a prison outside of Albany. Actress Ashley Judd was among the dozens of women to come forward with allegations against the studio boss.
This is what it's like to be a woman in America, living with male entitlement to our bodies.
The Manhattan DA says he will retry this case. As for Weinstein, it's unclear if he'll remain here in New York or be transferred to a California prison to serve a 16-year sentence for a conviction there. Whit.
So major questions about what happens next. All right, Eva, thank you. Now to those campus protests over the war in Gaza spreading to more colleges and universities tonight, even as authorities move to shut them down. Violent confrontations and arrests at Emory in Atlanta and at Northeastern University in Boston. While at Columbia, where the movement began, protesters face a deadline to take their tent encampment down. ABC's Stephanie Ramos tracking it all, and a warning, some of the images are difficult to watch.
Oh my God! Tonight, disturbing images of the crackdown on campus protests against the war in Gaza. In Atlanta, a state trooper repeatedly tasing a man at Emory University as protesters clashed with police.
I go to this school! I have a right to be here!
The university saying it all started when outsiders trespassed onto campus and set up tents.
I saw police knock students to the ground.
Across the country, more than 400 people detained on dozens of campuses as pro-Palestinian protesters call for schools to divest from companies that profit from ties to Israel. After nearly 100 protesters were arrested in clashes with police at USC, tonight, the university canceling their main graduation ceremony. Students at Columbia University nearing a deadline to clear this encampment.
Friends of mine.
This Jewish student says he's been harassed by protesters and just wants safety and order.
I know it looks peaceful now. If this is how it remains, then okay, fine. I'm okay with that.
Other Jewish students who join these pro-Palestinian protests insist their goal is peace.
I know that if we see a free Palestine within our lifetime, I am one step closer to the Jewish safety that myself, all my peers are looking for.
Columbia had given protesters another 48 hours until tomorrow to clear the encampment. We know protesters are still in talks with university officials. One student telling us it hasn't been an easy process, at one point stepping away from the negotiating table. But tonight, they are back at it. Whit.
Stephanie Ramos, thank you. Now to that 1-2 punch of severe weather across the heartland. At this hour, tornado watches for multiple states, more than 20 million on alert for severe storms. Then a second round striking this weekend from Texas up to the Great Lakes. ABC's Rob Marciano here, our senior meteorologist tracking it all. And Rob, a very active 4-day stretch now.
Yeah, you can call it a four-punch combination here. We got tornado watches that are already up. We've had at least one confirmed tornado in western Kansas, and these are up until at least midnight, and there's continue to bubble. Another batch of storms is going to fire across the Red River tonight. That includes Wichita Falls up through Oklahoma. Large hail and damaging winds in those storms. Everything pushes east tomorrow with the bullseye becoming more of an Omaha to Kansas City for the highest tornado threat. Then we reset everything on Saturday, and I think the I-35 corridor could become explosive up through Oklahoma City, Wichita, Kansas City, and then pushing to the east on Sunday, St. Louis and Chicago. The highest threat for tornadoes will be Saturday. Either way, a very active 4 days and nights ahead.
All right, Rob Marciano, thank you. Now to our Earth Week series, The Power of Us, an ABC News investigation into where plastic bags earmarked to be recycled could end up. That's if they're recycled at all. Here's ABC's chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman.
Tonight, our 18-month investigation following the trail of plastic waste American consumers think they are recycling. All we want to know is where you send the plastic bags that are earmarked for recycling. Our team, following 46 tracking devices we placed in plastic bag recycling bins at big box stores across the country. And we found 3 from Walmart stores ended up thousands of miles away. One of them pinging from outside plastic facilities in Indonesia, where we found what appears to be illegal dumping. Another landing at a facility in Malaysia, which a 2023 Malaysian government list said was operating without an import license.
Happened in Malaysia.
Pua Lepeng lives on the front lines of the plastic pollution crisis.
This is a human right infringement. Why you think that we are better than you to manage the waste you created?
None of these facilities responded to our request for comment, and for over a year, Walmart also declined to talk. So we decided to attend a conference where their chief sustainability officer was speaking.
I'm Matt Gutman with ABC News. How are you?
Walmart's Kathleen McLaughlin.
These are the pictures of the facilities that your plastic ended up in Indonesia, that's in Malaysia.
Let's get time to talk about this. I'd love to learn more about.
Well, we have a room actually right here if you would come.
I'm sorry.
It would be,
Let's talk about it.
well, we've been trying to for over a year now, and we've been flatly rejected by your team.
Ultimately, they declined the interview, but provided a statement saying in part they are continuously improving their recycling program, drawing up new contracts with partners requiring proof they're actually recycling.
And our thanks to Matt Gutman for that. You can see more of Matt's 18-month-long eye-opening reporting, Trash, The Secret Life of Plastic Exports, streaming now on Hulu and ABC News Live. When we come back tonight, disturbing body camera video. Authorities investigating the death of a man following a struggle with police, an officer with his knee on his back as he screams, "I can't breathe." And the alarming attempted landing at LAX, the 747 bouncing down the runway. Stay with us. Tonight, authorities are releasing graphic body camera video following the death of a driver after a confrontation with police in Canton, Ohio. Police say video shows Frank Tyson struggling with officers shortly after he crashed his car last week. An officer can be seen with his knee on Tyson's upper back for about 30 seconds. Tyson heard screaming, "I can't breathe." He appears motionless for more than 5 minutes before officers checked for a pulse. He died at the hospital about an hour later. 2 officers have been placed on administrative leave while an investigation is underway. When we come back, the aborted landing at LAX, the passenger jet bouncing on the runway. To the index tonight, white-knuckle moments for passengers on board a Lufthansa flight attempting to land at LAX. Video showing the Boeing 747 bouncing down the runway before the pilot pulls up, going around another time. 326 passengers on board, nobody was hurt. The plane was able to land smoothly on the second try. When we come back, we'll head out to Will Reeve in Detroit, the NFL Draft about to get underway. Finally tonight, the NFL Draft now underway, and who are the first star picks? Here's ABC's Will Reeve in Detroit.
Tonight, the NFL Draft kicking off in Detroit. An estimated 400,000 fans descending on the Motor City.
With the first pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Caleb Williams.
Quarterback Caleb Williams, selected first overall by the Chicago Bears.
It took a lot of sacrifice, love, care for one game of football, my teammates, my coaches, and my family.
Before the draft, we spoke to the Commanders' second overall pick, Jaden Daniels.
If you do go second overall in the draft, what would that mean to you?
Obviously, that's where I was meant to be. That's where God placed me to be. So I'm going to, embrace it. I'm blessed to be in this position.
These hundreds of thousands of fans and millions more around the country hoping their teams made the right decision. The draft continues all weekend on ESPN and ABC. Whit.
A big night ahead. Will, thank you. We'll be watching, and thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm Whit Johnson in New York. Have a great night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.
Tonight, the Supreme Court hearing Donald Trump's claims of immunity as his hush money trial resumes. The Supreme Court now weighing whether the former president can be tried for plotting to overturn the 2020 election. And if so, will it happen before November? What the justices appear to signal. Mr. Trump, meanwhile, back in a New York courtroom. David Pecker, the former National Enquirer publisher, back on the stand, testifying about the alleged catch and kill scheme to help Mr. Trump's 2016 campaign. The tense conversation Pecker says he had over paying off Stormy Daniels. Also tonight, USC canceling its main commencement after the arrest of dozens of pro-Palestinian protesters. The new clashes as campus unrest spreads. Police at Atlanta's Emory University tasing a protester in handcuffs, restraining others with zip ties. Harvey Weinstein's rape conviction in New York overturned. The egregious errors the judge is accused of making, will it lead to a new trial? Tracking severe storms across several states tonight. The school principal police say was framed with fake racist remarks using AI. The suspect, a former staffer, arrested at the airport with a gun. And after the first video of their son in 200 days, the parents of an American-Israeli hostage speaking out their message of hope.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. An extraordinary give and take in the U.S. Supreme Court today as the 9 justices spent nearly 3 hours wrangling with lawyers over questions questions of when or whether a former American president is immune from federal prosecution over acts taken while in office. The questions raised during oral arguments are more than academic, but instead sit at the center of the special counsel's criminal election interference case against former President Trump, and whether a trial can happen before the November election. Mr. Trump claims absolute immunity from prosecution, something the court didn't seem inclined to go along with, yet conservatives on the court sharply questioned the special counsel's position as well. None of that stopping the New York hush money trial, which continued today for Mr. Trump as a key witness testified for a third day. Laura Jarrett has details.
Tonight, the U.S. Supreme Court weighing a monumental question that will decide whether the former president goes to trial for plotting to overturn the last election and win.
I think that the Supreme Court has a very important argument before it today.
Mr. Trump hoping to persuade the justices to find him immune from federal charges. His lawyers arguing the office of the presidency would be completely hobbled without that protection.
Without presidential immunity from criminal prosecution, there can be no presidency as we know it.
The special counsel's office indicted Mr. Trump on conspiracy and obstruction charges last year for his efforts to cling to power, accusing the likely GOP nominee of pressuring state officials to reverse the election results. Actions DOJ argues were for purely personal gain and cannot be shielded from prosecution.
There is no immunity that is in the Constitution unless this court creates it today.
The conservatives expressing concern if future presidents have no immunity for actions taken while in the White House. That could open the door to recriminations between political rivals.
Will that not lead us into a cycle that destabilizes the functioning of our country as a democracy?
The liberal justices troubled by the prospect of insulating presidents from accountability, raising a series of dark hypotheticals to underscore the consequences of adopting Mr. Trump's position.
If a president sells nuclear secrets to a foreign adversary, is that immune? How about if a president orders the military to stage a coup? That sure sounds bad, doesn't it?
I'm trying to understand what the disincentive is from turning the Oval Office into, the seat of criminal activity in this country.
The fallout over efforts to subvert the election results in 2020 stretching beyond Washington. In Arizona, a grand jury indicted several members of Mr. Trump's inner circle Wednesday, accusing them of falsely awarding the state's electoral votes to Mr. Trump, despite his loss to President Biden. The sending of phony slates of pro-Trump electors to Congress to disrupt the election certification on January 6th, looming large at the High Court today as well, as the justices look to determine the line between a political candidate's actions taken for personal gain from a president's official conduct that could be immune from prosecution.
Laura, we heard a lot today. What are the possible outcomes here?
Well, Lester, there's any number of different scenarios that the court could take here, but it seems most likely, based on the questioning, that the justices will say that the former president is not completely immune from all acts, but he might enjoy some limited immunity for some acts, in which case they're likely to send this case back down to the lower court to do some of that work to figure out where the line is, Lester. But of course, that means more delays, and it means that this case is not going to trial by November. Lester?
All right, Laura Jarrett starting us off. Thank you. And Mr. Trump's first criminal trial resumed in New York with more testimony from the former publisher of the National Enquirer about that payment to an adult film star. Here's Von Hilliard.
On his third day on the stand, former National Enquirer publisher David Pecker told the jury he refused to catch and kill Stormy Daniels' story about her relationship with then-candidate Donald Trump. Pecker said he told his right-hand man at the Enquirer not to pay Daniels the $120,000 she was seeking because they'd already shelled out tens of thousands of dollars to keep other stories about Mr. Trump quiet. If anyone should buy it, Pecker said, it should be Donald Trump and Michael Cohen, Trump's former fixer. Pecker says when he told Cohen, quote, he was upset and responded that the boss, referring to Trump, would be furious with me. Pecker said today he believed Mr. Trump or his company had paid Daniels until Cohen told him in December of 2016 that he was the one who paid her. Prosecutors are seeking to prove Mr. Trump doctored internal business records to cover up that payment. Pecker also testified Trump was aghast when he saw Stormy Daniels on 60 Minutes.
Was it hush money to stay silent?
Yes.
Pecker says Trump called him. He said, we have an agreement with Stormy Daniels that she cannot mention my name. Trump later denied knowledge of the arrangement. On cross-examination, Mr. Trump's lawyers challenging Pecker's credibility and business practices. At a campaign event earlier in the day, Mr. Trump addressed the testimony of his longtime friend.
David's been very nice guy.
Did you know about the payment to Stormy Daniels before the 2020 election? Pecker also testifying today about a payment his company did make to former Playboy model Karen McDougal to keep her alleged affair with Mr. Trump quiet. Pecker said he coordinated with Cohen because he was concerned paying McDougal could violate campaign finance law, so they worked up an agreement to pay for her contributions to magazines owned by American media, adding he believed Trump was aware of the payment. The prosecution asking Pecker, was your principal purpose to suppress her story so as not to influence the election? Pecker responding, yes, it was.
Von, what did Mr. Trump's lawyers focus on during David Pecker's cross-examination?
Lester, for one, that Donald Trump was not the only celebrity who he helped squash negative stories for in exchange for good ones, but instead that this was a mutually beneficial relationship dating back to the 90s when Donald Trump was a celebrity here in New York City. Cross-examination will continue tomorrow. Lester?
Von Hilliard, thank you. New protests flaring up across the country today as pro-Palestinian demonstrations escalated and more people were arrested. And with graduation season practically here, Liz Kreutz reports schools are making tough choices.
In an unprecedented move, the University of Southern California tonight canceling this year's main commencement ceremony, attended by roughly 65,000 people, citing new safety measures put in place amid protests on campus. The stunning decision coming
Tonight, conviction overturned. A judge accused of a critical error in the trial of disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein.
citing new safety measures put in place amid protests on campus. The stunning decision coming a day after nearly 100 protesters were arrested for trespassing after a contentious rally where pro-Palestinian demonstrators clashed with police.
Even if they have to cancel every single commencement, that's up to them.
The school's administration had already canceled the graduation speech for their pro-Palestinian valedictorian Asna Tabassum, citing safety concerns. Coast to coast, growing protests on more college campuses over the Israel-Hamas war, from George Washington University to Northeastern to Emory and Atlanta, where police in riot gear today clashed with demonstrators. Law enforcement appearing to use zip ties to restrain the protesters, even tasing one person. At Columbia, the epicenter of the protest, those camping out given a deadline to disperse by 4 a.m. If not, the university says we will have to consider alternative options for clearing the area.
And these protests are now spreading here in California as well. Here at UCLA, students have begun gathering, pitching tents in the heart of campus. Many of these students calling on the university to divest from Israel.
Tonight, these rising tensions igniting a debate about free speech versus hate speech on college campuses. At USC, Professor Brittany Friedman criticizing the university for escalating what she says have been peaceful protests.
You believe these students' First Amendment rights are being violated?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They are criticizing a nation state for their actions in war, not criticizing a faith that is very close to me.
But some Jewish students say they feel the demonstrations have crossed a line.
I don't believe that, advocating for the rights of the Palestinian people are inherently anti-Semitic, but some of these chants and some of the ways in which that they attribute and target Jewish students, that is anti-Semitic.
And Liz joins us now from UCLA. What's the scene there, Liz?
Well, Lester, it's a growing protest here. There's now several hundred students camped out. They say they plan to stay here until the university meets their demands. As for USC, we've heard from so many disappointed students tonight. The university saying they made this decision because they feel that it would just take too long to process all the thousands of guests given these new security measures. Lester?
Liz Courts in Los Angeles, thank you. Now, that startling reversal today in the New York rape case that sent former film mogul Harvey Weinstein to prison. The state's top court overturning his conviction. Here's Kate Snow.
For the more than 100 accusers of Harvey Weinstein, it was a shock.
This today is an act of institutional betrayal.
In a 4-3 decision, the New York Court of Appeals finding Weinstein is entitled to a new trial. His spokesperson speaking to NBC's Chloe Malas.
What he did might have been insensitive, might have been unethical, but it wasn't a crime. And in order for them to bring it back, they're going to have to find witnesses to come forward with actual crimes.
Weinstein was charged with crimes in New York involving 3 women and convicted in 2020 of rape and sexual assault. But that trial also included testimony from 3 other women who made allegations that never led to charges. Today, the majority in the Court of Appeals concluding the trial court made egregious errors, erroneously admitting that testimony, calling it unnecessary.
The jury was able to look at that and probably infer that he was guilty in the past, so he must be guilty now.
And that's what this higher court said can't be allowed.
That's right.
The State Court of Appeals also said the trial court abused its discretion when it said Weinstein could be cross-examined about those other 3 women.
And even if he denied them, just the fact of being accused of them could allow the jury to infer his guilt based on prior behavior.
He then decided not to testify. One of those women was Dawn Dunning. Today she said, "People have asked me if I regret having testified. Was this all for naught?" And my answer is a resounding no. We spoke with other Weinstein accusers not involved in the trial.
All of the fear and the panic and the confusion from the original trauma comes back.
I'm deeply concerned it's a setback for justice for survivors.
In a dissenting opinion, 3 justices wrote, "Men who serially sexually exploit their power over women will reap the benefit of today's decision."
We've already heard this refrain about Me Too has gone too far, and I think that there's going to be some people out there thinking, oh, good, so now we've addressed the balance. And I don't think Me Too ever went far enough.
So, Kate, what happens now?
So the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, Lester, says that they will do everything in their power to retry the case. Weinstein's representative says for now he will remain in New York. And remember, Weinstein is appealing a 16-year sentence for rape in California. His L.A. attorney tonight says the New York decision has a significant impact on that pending appeal, saying the L.A. trial judge, quote, made the same errors as the New York trial court.
All right, Kate, thanks very much. We are tracking a multi-day severe weather threat in the central U.S. Millions at risk from Texas to South Dakota for storms that could produce softball-sized hail, tornadoes, and 70-mile-per-hour gusts. Tomorrow, the threat pushes more into the plains and Midwest. In 60 seconds, the impact of high prices we're all paying becoming more the drag in the economy. The mixed signs and what they mean. Next. We're back with growing concerns about the bird flu tonight. This comes as the FDA said that testing of pasteurized milk around the country found that 1 in 5 samples were positive for fragments of the bird flu virus. While the FDA says milk supply is safe, the concern is that more cows are sick than first believed and that this could increase the risk to humans. New evidence about how the high prices we're still paying for so many things are slowing down the economy while President Biden tries to maintain a positive message. Peter Alexander now with the latest.
Tonight, after more than a year and a half of strong spending, some of the steam is now coming out of the economy. The GDP rate slowing to 1.6% in the first 3 months of this year, well below expectations.
What it means is that the core of the economy, business and consumer spending, is doing just fine. Inflation numbers, they are not fine.
Inflation, while down from 40-year highs just a couple of years ago, remains stubborn. Those consumer prices we all pay, up nearly 3.5%, a bigger jump than just 3 months ago, taking its toll on Christy Coughlin and her family in Bend, Oregon.
You're a registered dietitian. Food is your life. So how have your grocery shopping habits changed?
We've decided to use the 1-bag rule or 2 bags. We'll fill them. And once those bags are full, then we'll walk in. It really eliminates impulse buys.
In Syracuse, New York today, President Biden optimistic about the economy.
American manufacturing is back. That's today's a comeback story, creating new jobs, new businesses, new hope.
But with most Americans disapproving of his handling of the economy, the president has some convincing to do before the election this fall. Still, as summer comes, despite higher costs, Americans are willing to spend to get away. At Dollywood theme parks in Tennessee, they're on pace to surpass last year's record attendance. American families booking further in advance and coming from farther away.
These latest figures complicate the Fed's decision about when it could finally cut interest rates, reinforcing concerns that borrowing costs for consumers and businesses could stay higher for longer. Lester?
All right, Peter Alexander at the White House, thank you. Up next, the alarming warning about the dangers of AI, why a high school official is accused of using AI to put fake words in the mouth of a principal. Next. We're back now with an alarming story shining a light on the dangers AI can pose. Police say a high school principal was framed with racist remarks created using AI to mimic his voice. Here's Blaine Alexander.
The audio clip is less than 60 seconds, long enough to completely upend a Baltimore area high school. In it, a voice is heard making racist remarks about black students' academic performance and anti-Semitic complaints about Jewish community members. For months, parents, teachers, and students believed it was a racist rant by Pikesville High School principal Eric Eiswart. But today, officials revealed that voice was generated by AI, and they've arrested the school's athletic director, 31-year-old Dazon Darian, for allegedly creating it.
Detectives allege Mr. Darian, who was the athletic director at the high school, made the recording to retaliate against the principal who had launched an investigation into the potential mishandling of school funds.
Police say Darian was arrested today while trying to board a flight to Houston, initially taken into custody for a gun in his bag when police discovered the outstanding warrant. He's now charged with disrupting school operations, along with theft, retaliating against a witness, and stalking. The clip was first circulated back in January and quickly went viral.
As a parent, I'm horrified, and as a rabbi, I'm quite disturbed.
It's hard to pay attention to your class because everybody was talking about it.
At the time, the principal denied ever making those remarks. Officials say the clip had, quote, profound repercussions, leading to the principal's temporary removal from the school. A fake recording with very real consequences, all sparking new concerns around the growth of AI. Blaine Alexander, NBC News.
Coming up, our intimate conversation with the parents of American hostage Hirsch Poland, seen alive for the first time in a Hamas video. Their message of hope is next. After more than 200 days, they finally saw a video of their son alive. Now the parents of an Israeli-American hostage have renewed hope of bringing him home. They spoke with Raf Sanchez.
It's the video no parent would want, but the Goldberg Polands long to see. Their son Hirsch in Hamas captivity, missing his left hand, but alive.
What was it like for you to see that video?
I mean, initially, we were just crying. I wasn't even paying attention to what he was saying. I was just looking at him and hearing his voice.
He certainly doesn't look like himself, but it was amazing to see him and amazing to see that he speaks like himself.
The undated video, the first sign of life in more than 200 days.
He went to a concert with his friends, and he was stolen from his life and stolen from our lives. I mean, we are frozen in time. We are absolutely frozen in time.
That time, 8:11 a.m. on October 7th, when Hirsch sent his last messages.
I love you guys. I'm sorry. And I wrote, I'm leaving my phone on. Let us know you're okay. And you've never been received.
While negotiations to free the hostages are stalled, today, a moment of light. The White House releasing this photo of the president meeting with 4-year-old Abigail Edan, the youngest American taken hostage. She's remarkable in recovering from unspeakable trauma, he said. John and Rachel determined to bring Hirsch and all the other hostages home. And they're drawing strength from that brief glimpse of their only son.
Even when you feel like your knees are buckling and your soul is breaking and your heart is crying, you have to be hopeful and you have to keep running.
Raf Sanchez, NBC News, Jerusalem.
And that's Nightly News for this Thursday. Thank you for watching. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night.
For 234 years of American history, no president was ever prosecuted for his official acts.
A landmark hearing as the Supreme Court considers whether Donald Trump has absolute immunity against criminal prosecutions from his time in office.
If there's no threat of criminal prosecution, what prevents the president from just doing whatever he wants?
Could it further delay his federal election interference trial? Plus the big developments in Trump's so-called hush money trial. The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. We want to begin tonight with the Supreme Court and the unprecedented case of presidential immunity before the justices. At issue is whether former President Donald Trump is immune from criminal prosecution for what he claims were official acts while in office. The decision will have major implications on the special counsel's election interference case against Trump, as well as this year's presidential race. Trump wasn't at today's oral arguments at the Supreme Court. He was in a courtroom in Lower Manhattan, where he is mandated to appear for his trial for falsifying business records to hide an alleged affair. In addition, Trump is facing criminal trials in Georgia and Florida, and in just the last 24 hours, Trump was named as an unindicted co-conspirator in Arizona and Michigan over fake electoral schemes. We have team coverage of today's major developments, and CBS Jan Crawford will start us off from the Supreme Court.
In nearly 3 hours of historic arguments, the justices emphasized their decision will go beyond former President Donald Trump.
Whatever we decide is going to apply to all future presidents.
No president has ever faced criminal prosecution, and some justices, while emphasizing a president is not above the law, focused on what precedent the case will set.
History tells us it's not going to stop. It's going to cycle back and be used against the current president or the next president and the next president and the next president after that.
I am concerned about future uses of the criminal law to target political opponents.
Trump is arguing he has absolute immunity as president from prosecution for official acts during his tenure in office, including efforts to overturn the 2020 election. He made the point again before entering a New York courtroom on trial today in one of 4 criminal cases against him.
The president has to have immunity. This has nothing to do with me.
But that sweeping argument of absolute immunity is one the justices, liberal and conservative, seemed almost certain to reject.
If the potential for criminal liability is taken off the table, wouldn't there be a significant risk that future presidents would be emboldened to commit crimes with abandon while they're in office?
The framers did not put an immunity clause into the Constitution. Wasn't the whole point that the president was not a monarch and the president was not supposed to be above the law?
Instead, the justices appear to be focused on a middle ground where presidents may have some immunity from prosecution for official acts, as Justice Clarence Thomas asked at the very beginning of the argument.
How exactly would we determine what an official act is?
That question may take time. The court has never decided it, but the clock is ticking if Special Counsel Jack Smith can prosecute Trump before the election.
And Jan joins us now. So if the justices rule that he has some limited immunity, how long could this take? What's the timeline?
I wouldn't expect a decision before June. I mean, this is a complicated case. The justices know it's going to be the law long after they have left the Supreme Court. But that's what Special Counsel Jack Smith asked for. The court agreed to expedite this case so they could have a decision by the end of the term. Now, whether or not there's a decision in time for a trial before the election, that'll be determined by how the court writes it and whether or not there are issues for the lower courts to resolve. Nora?
All right, really interesting, Jen Crawford. Thank you. Instead of being at those Supreme Court hearings, Donald Trump was in a courthouse in Lower Manhattan for his so-called hush money trial. That's where we find CBS's Robert Costa. Good evening, Robert.
Good evening, Nora. Former President Donald Trump isn't attacking David Pecker, the former publisher of the National Enquirer, just yet. But Pecker's testimony today here in Lower Manhattan could threaten Trump, offering new details about that alleged catch-and-kill operation to influence the 2016 election. This morning, former President Trump weighed in on a key witness in his criminal trial, former National Enquirer publisher David Pecker.
It's been very nice. I mean, David's been very nice guy.
Trump has known Pecker for decades, and prosecutors allege the pair, along with former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen, engaged in a conspiracy to suppress negative stories about Trump as he ran for president in 2016. Pecker told jurors just after the Access Hollywood tape surfaced weeks before the election.
I'm just not kissing them.
Discussions about what to do with Stormy Daniels heated up. The adult film star was, according to Pecker, shopping the story of her alleged affair with Trump. Pecker testified he didn't have the $120,000 she wanted, so he told Cohen to buy and bury her story, saying if he didn't, and the story gets out, the boss is going to be very angry with you.
The DA's case is really rises and falls with David Pecker's testimony because he is the linchpin behind their theory of this sort of conspiratorial scheme to influence the election.
Pecker also testified about an agreement with former Playboy model Karen McDougal, who says she had a 10-month affair with Trump, which he denies. Pecker acknowledged AMI, which then owned the Enquirer, paid $150,000 for her story just weeks before the election and never published it.
If Donald Trump hadn't been running for president, do you believe this deal would have been made with AMI, knowing what you know now?
Probably not, no.
In his testimony, Pecker said the payment orchestrated with Michael Cohen was done because they didn't want the story to embarrass Mr. Trump or hurt the campaign. Pecker said he asked Cohen who would foot the bill. He responded, the boss, meaning Trump, will take care of it. Meanwhile, Trump's legal challenge is expanded overnight. His former lawyer Rudy Giuliani and Chief of Staff Mark Meadows were among more than a dozen people indicted in a scheme in Arizona to falsely declare Trump as the 2020 winner.
Donald J. Trump?
Trump himself was named as an unindicted co-conspirator. Pecker also made a stunning new allegation that's never been heard before, that he engaged with Hope Hicks and Sarah Huckabee Sanders, then White House staffers, along with Trump, about Karen McDougal's contract, raising new questions about the Trump administration's implication in this case. Nora?
Robert Costa, thank you. Tonight, a stunning blow to the case that sparked the Me Too movement. Disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein had his felony sex crime convictions overturned today by New York's highest court. CBS's Drake Duncan has been covering the story since the scandal broke in 2017, and a warning, some of the details are disturbing.
Tonight, disgraced former Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein remains behind bars after a New York appeals court ruled he did not receive a fair trial. Weinstein's attorney, Arthur Aidala.
This was a case about perversion. Well, in that courthouse at trial, the laws were perverted because there was so much pressure, because Harvey was the face of this movement, and he had to be convicted.
The court found that in 2020, the judge, quote, erroneously admitted testimony by allowing women who were not part of the case to testify that Weinstein had assaulted them. CBS News legal analyst Ricky Kleeman.
He would get a more fair trial, according to the Court of Appeals, because these other prior bad act witnesses will be excluded.
The decision comes more than 4 years after the 72-year-old was found guilty and sentenced to 23 years in prison for sexually assaulting 2 women. Lauren Savant, who never testified in court, says in 2007, Weinstein masturbated in front of her at a dinner party.
Do you think overturning Harvey Weinstein's conviction has an impact on whether or not people who say they've been sexually assaulted decide to speak out?
It will 100% have a chilling effect on victims coming forward. I mean, think about it. Think about how hard it is to come forward in the first place. You know, whether or not you're even believed.
The New York District Attorney plans to retry the case, but keep in mind Harvey Weinstein faces a 16-year sentence in California for sexual assault. His attorneys say they want to look at that case too. Nora?
Well, for now, he's in jail. Jerika Duncan, thank you. Well, now to those growing pro-Palestinian demonstrations embroiling college campuses. Today, we've seen tensions rise at more than a dozen schools from coast to coast. Since last week, hundreds of campus protesters have been arrested. One major university today canceling its graduation. CBS's Jason Allen has new details tonight on the campus chaos.
Campus crackdown at Atlanta's Emory University. Police tore down tents erected this morning, and some appear to be tased by police. Some students and faculty were led away in handcuffs. Here at the University of Texas, Austin, dueling protests. Pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli protesters facing off on campus with security watching.
It is my understanding that University of Texas Austin funds research that Israel directly benefits from.
On the campus of USC, the LAPD used their batons to disperse a large crowd of protesters late last night. The school canceling the main stage commencement ceremony. CBS's Nancy Chen is at Columbia University.
Dozens of tents remain here at Columbia University as we near a midnight deadline. School administrators have set to clear this lawn. Right outside it, Israeli flags. And some Jewish students we spoke to say they feel scared to be on campus.
Many of us knew people or at the music festival or that live nearby. I'm sorry, I'm getting very emotional about that. And adding to that, the situation where people scream hateful speech, who have harassed and attacked both verbally and physically people, is just making it impossible to be here.
Back here in Austin, student demonstrators are still here. They are on campus tonight. Police are close by, but they are not making any efforts to clear this space the way that they did yesterday. Nora?
Jason Allen, thank you. President Biden joined 17 other world leaders today demanding that Hamas release the hostages it took more than 6 months ago in its unprecedented attack on Israel. This comes the day after Hamas released a propaganda video showing one of the 5 Israeli-American hostages still believed to be alive. CBS's Deborah Patta spoke with his mother today.
The last time Rachel Goldberg-Pollen heard from her son Hirsch was over 200 days ago in a text message saying, "I love you," as he was being taken hostage on October 7.
Shalom.
That is until yesterday, when he appeared with an amputated hand, an injury sustained during the attack on a Hamas propaganda video.
Hirsch and I are both left-handed. And now he's not left-handed anymore. It was truly just an overwhelming moment.
Goldberg-Pollen has urged her son to stay strong.
We are telling you, we love you, stay strong, survive.
It was a very powerful moment as a mother. I don't know if he hears it or if he feels it or if he knows it, but I am ordering him to survive. So many people were so emotional because they really have not thought he was alive.
Remarkably, Goldberg-Pollen's anguish over her son's abduction has not prevented her from seeing the suffering of others.
Hundreds of thousands of innocent people in Gaza are suffering, and I know one of them really well, and his name is Hirsch.
Her message to those negotiating a deal:
it requires loving and caring about your people more than you hate the other. Let's be human. Let's figure it out, and let's end this.
It's enough, she said. It's now time for the hostages to come home. Deborah Patta, CBS News, Jerusalem.
Very powerful. Tonight, we continue our CBS News investigation into one of the dark sides of online dating romance scams. In our final installment, CBS's Jim Axelrod takes a look at what law enforcement can do to combat this billion-dollar crime wave.
I never thought that this could happen to our family.
When Kelly Dow's widowed mother, Laura Kowal, went on Match.com, she eventually was scammed out of $1.5 million. Laura's life would end at 57, her body found in the Mississippi River.
We are constantly chasing our tails.
David Parrish is the sheriff in Lewis County, Missouri, where Laura's body was discovered.
Online romance scams are a scourge. We deal with it every other week.
But like law enforcement in small towns across America, Sheriff Parrish says he doesn't have the resources to fully investigate these online scam cases, even when a body washes ashore.
We are always behind the 8 ball on this.
But it's not just Sheriff Parrish who's frustrated.
It's a substantial problem, and it's one that's rapidly accelerating.
Arun Rao, the Justice Department official in Washington overseeing romance scam cases, says his main challenge is that the scammers are far away. The FBI has participated in operations in the West African nations of Nigeria and Ghana. Rao traveled there last fall.
We were shown video of scammers using artificial intelligence enhanced video technology. And so it appeared to the victim that they were speaking to another American citizen.
It's a little chilling as you're describing it.
It is chilling, and it also makes it challenging for law enforcement to intervene.
But this former scammer, who spoke to us from the West African country of Ghana, offers a key insight into combating these crimes.
You cannot do that without the online dating site.
You need those online dating platforms.
Definitely.
A 2019 Federal Trade Commission lawsuit alleged that between 2013 and 2018, as many as 25 to 30% of Match.com members who register each day were using Match.com to perpetrate scams. In a statement, Match Group told us, "We believe the FTC allegations have no merit."
Good, Jim Axelrod from CBS News.
After 6 months of asking for an interview, we finally approached Bernard Kim, the CEO of Match Group, which operates at least a dozen dating platforms, including Hinge, OkCupid, and Tinder.
When we've talked to scammers in Africa, they say there's no issue, there's no problem setting up fake profiles.
I mean, if you looked at our community standards, our guidelines, we've reshifted the way that we've addressed people that can come into our platforms. We're working really, really hard every single day to make sure that people are authentic.
Match told us they removed 96% of improper accounts within a day and use both AI and human moderators to remove bad actors.
To your customers who have lost a lot of money, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars, life savings, or the relatives of people who've even lost their lives, what do you have to say to them?
Look, I mean, things happen in life. That's really difficult. I have a tremendous amount of empathy for things that happen. But I mean, our job is to keep people safe on our platforms. That is top foremost, most important thing to us.
One more note about the Match Group. Last month, they announced a new head of trust and safety. That's the corporate office responsible for customer security. Nora?
Jim Axelrod, thank you. More traces of bird flu are found in America's milk supply. What's being done about it? Next. Tonight, there's new evidence that bird flu is more widespread among America's dairy cows. The FDA says the virus has been detected in about 1 in 5 tested samples of milk taken from stores. Health officials say this is likely not a threat to humans because of pasteurization. The dairy industry has been ordered to now test cows being transported across state lines for possible infection. Big changes are coming to school cafeteria menus. We'll have the details next. The federal government is issuing new standards to lower the amount of sugar and salt in breakfast and lunches served in schools. Next year, there will be new limits on added sugar in foods like cereal and flavored milk. Sodium levels will be cut by 10 to 15% by 2027. We'll be right back with tonight's Heart of America.
This portion of the CBS Evening News is sponsored by Fasenra. Visit us at fasenra.com.
Finally, tonight's Heart of America is celebrating the oldest living former Major League Baseball player, turning 100 today. Former New York Yankees pitcher Art Shalek won 3 World Series rings with the Bronx Bombers. Prior to the big leagues, Shalek served in the U.S. Navy during World War II. Today, he was celebrated at his senior living community in Sonoma, California with a Yankees-themed party. He says his secret to his longevity is, listen to this, 2 martinis every night. And at 100, he's still having a ball.
I'm having a good time. I'm still here. And I have a lot of wonderful memories of baseball. I love to play it, and they paid you for it.
Art Shalek, tonight's Part of America. And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. I'm Nora O'Donnell. Good night.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Biden signed the $95 billion military spending package for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan Wednesday after months of congressional wrangling. Biden said weapons would flow into Ukraine within hours and declared, quote, it's a good day for world peace. The spending package includes $26 billion in more funding for Israel, which has now killed over 34,000 Palestinians in Gaza in just over 6 months. 14,000 of them are children, according to official numbers. The true toll is likely much higher as thousands remain missing or trapped under rubble. Israel announced Wednesday it's readying 2 reserve brigades ahead of its expected ground invasion of Rafah, which the U.S. has publicly opposed. As Biden signed off on sending more arms to Israel, an independent task force released a report showing Israel's use of U.S.-provided weapons violates international humanitarian law. The task force was co-chaired by Palestinian-American legal expert Noura Erakat and Josh Paul, who resigned from the State Department over the Biden administration's support for Israel's war on Gaza. In Gaza, the World Food Program warned this week widespread famine is approaching amidst the ongoing assault and obstruction of aid.
We estimate 30% of children below age of 2 is now acutely malnourished or wasted, and 70% of the population in the north is facing catastrophic hunger. There is reasonable evidence that all 3 famine thresholds, food insecurity, malnutrition, mortality, will be passed in the next 6 weeks.
This comes as more horrifying details emerge about 3 mass graves found at the decimated Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. Rescue workers have uncovered nearly 400 bodies, including children, with some victims appearing to have been executed or buried alive. We'll have more on this after headlines. Amidst fears of a wider Middle East conflict, the Norwegian Refugee Council's chief, Jan Egeland, is warning Lebanon is, quote, on the brink of imploding. Over 98,000 people have been forced to flee their homes in southern Lebanon amidst daily cross-border attacks between Hezbollah and the Israeli army since October 7th. Student protests against Israel's war on Gaza are continuing to spread across U.S. campuses despite an intensifying police crackdown. In Los Angeles, police in riot gear arrested 93 people after students at the University of Southern California began an occupation of USC's Alumni Park to call for USC to divest from Israel.
Students at other schools have shown incredible bravery, incredible strength in continuing their occupations in the face of incredible repression from the universities, and we will do the same as well. And also, more importantly, the people of Palestine the people of Gaza have continued to show incredible determination and strength and resilience in their fight for liberation against the Israeli regime, against the genocide that they're experiencing, and so we hope to embody the same spirit of resistance.
The USC protest came a week after the school canceled the commencement speech by the valedictorian Asna Tabassum, who'd expressed support for Palestinians. USC has since canceled all outside speakers at this year's ceremonies. At the University of Texas, Austin, school officials called in local and state police who violently crushed a student attempt to set up an encampment on the university's South Mall. At least 50 people were arrested, including at least 1 journalist. Some faculty at UT Austin are going on strike today to protest the student arrests. In a statement, the teachers wrote, quote, we have witnessed police punching a female student, knocking over a legal observer, dragging a student over a chain-link fence, and violently arresting students simply for standing at the front of the crowd, unquote. In Massachusetts, police made at least 108 arrests as officers broke up a student encampment at Emerson College in Boston overnight. Meanwhile, students at Harvard University defied school orders and began a tent encampment at Harvard Yard, which has been closed since Tuesday. And earlier this morning, police moved in and started arresting Princeton students as they were setting up their own Gaza Solidarity encampment. On Wednesday, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson faced heckling and boos when he visited Columbia University. Johnson called for Biden to send in the National Guard to bring order to the campus where students set up the Gaza Solidarity encampment last week. Johnson also called for Columbia President Manu Shafiq to step down. Columbia and Barnard students criticized Johnson's visit.
What makes us scared or threatened is the president bring NYPD to our campus. Is the people like him to bring the National Guard to our campus. We don't need that. That is the thing make us feel scared and threatened.
We'll have more on the student protests later in the show. The U.S. Supreme Court appeared deeply divided as it heard arguments Wednesday on Idaho's near-total abortion ban. The Biden administration argues Idaho's law violates the Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act by only providing emergency abortion care when a patient is facing death. This is U.S. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelager.
Women in Idaho today are not getting treatment. They are getting airlifted out of the state to Salt Lake City into neighboring states where there are health exceptions in their laws because the doctors are facing mandatory minimum, 2 years in prison, loss of their license, criminal prosecution. The doctors can't provide the care because until they can conclude that a prosecutor looking over their shoulder won't second guess that maybe it wasn't really necessary to prevent death.
The court's ruling will have major implications for at least half a dozen other states with similar bans. As arguments were delivered, protesters rallied outside the Supreme Court against the Idaho ban.
It clearly states that women don't matter, that the fetus they carry matters more. They're conduits instead of people. They're not even given proper access to health treatment and health care that they require.
The Supreme Court is taking up another major case today as it considers Donald Trump's claims of immunity against criminal prosecution. In more abortion news, the Arizona House on Wednesday repealed the 1864 near-total abortion ban, just 2 weeks after Arizona Supreme Court revived the Civil War-era law. Democrats were joined by 3 House Republicans. The repeal must now pass the Arizona Senate before Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs can sign it, which would reinstate Arizona's 2022 law, which bans abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. Yolanda Bejarano, chair of the Arizona Democratic Party, spoke following yesterday's vote.
The stakes in this election cycle could not be higher, and the contrast between our two parties could not be clearer. Democrats are fighting for abortion rights. We are fighting to protect Arizona values. The Republican Party is taking away our rights and are under sole control of Donald Trump.
In other news from Arizona, a grand jury indicted former President Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, lawyer Rudy Giuliani, and 16 others for plotting to use fake electors in Arizona to overturn Trump's 2020 election loss. Meanwhile, in Michigan, a pretrial hearing revealed Trump, Meadows, and Giuliani were unindicted co-conspirators in the Michigan Attorney General's case against fake electors. Prosecutors say all 3 men directly participated in a plot to replace Michigan's electoral votes for Biden with electoral votes for Trump. In Iran, a court has sentenced hip-hop artist Toomaj Salehi to death for supporting the 2022 popular uprising in his songs. Toomaj Salehi, who is already serving a 6-year jail sentence, is appealing the ruling. In related news, rights groups are sounding the alarm over escalating attacks by security forces on women who are out in public without a hijab. Arrested women have reported physical, verbal, and sexual attacks by Iranian authorities. TikTok says it'll challenge legislation signed by President Biden yesterday, which forces TikTok's Chinese parent company ByteDance to divest from its U.S. operations or be banned. Critics have described the ban as a form of censorship fueled by anti-Chinese sentiment. This is TikTok CEO Shouji Chu addressing the app's users on TikTok.
As you may have heard, Congress passed a bill that the president signed into law that is designed to ban TikTok in the United States. That will take TikTok away from you and 170 million Americans who find community and connection on our platform. Make no mistake, this is a ban on TikTok and a ban on you and your voice. Politicians may say otherwise, but don't get confused. Many who sponsored the bill admit a TikTok ban is their ultimate goal.
And back here in New York, 33 climate activists were arrested Wednesday after shutting down Citigroup's global headquarters to demand the bank stop funding fossil fuels. Activists blockaded every entrance to the building. You can see our coverage of the story at democracynow.org. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
Tonight, conviction overturned. A judge accused of a critical error in the trial of disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein. The stunning reversal
This today is an act of institutional betrayal.
in a defining case of the Me Too era.
We knew that Harvey Weinstein did not get a fair trial.
Honda revs up electric vehicle plants supported by taxpayer dollars.
New facilities, new plants that are going to employ 1,000 new workers.
Plus, double legal trouble for Donald Trump as executive power comes under the U.S. Supreme Court microscope.
Presidential immunity is imperative, or you practically won't have a country anymore.
Also, remembering Bob Cole, the legendary voice of Canada's game. And pouring it all into a new musical.
We hope it'll make people laugh. We hope it'll surprise people.
A coffee giant searches for success on the stage.
CTV National News with Omar Sajadina.
Good evening, everyone. A case that triggered a global social movement and ended in a landmark Me Too legal ruling against one of Hollywood's most powerful men was overturned today. New York's top court reversing Harvey Weinstein's rape conviction. For his more than 100 accusers, a shock, and for him, a victory, although the 72-year-old will remain in prison because of another rape conviction in Los Angeles under appeal. Manhattan's district attorney's office is vowing to retry the New York case, which means some of Weinstein's accusers may be forced to testify again. CTV's Genevieve Beauchemin on What's Next.
A stunning reversal in a case that helped trigger the Me Too movement. New York's top court ruled Harvey Weinstein, once one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, had not received a fair trial. In a split 4-3 decision, New York's top court ruled the trial judge made errors, including a crucial mistake by allowing a series of women who said Weinstein assaulted them to testify, while their accusations were not actually part of the charges against him.
In that courthouse at trial, the laws were perverted because there was so much pressure. Because Harvey was the face of this movement, and he had to be convicted.
Ashley Judd, the first actress to come forward, called the news unfair to survivors.
This today is an act of institutional betrayal.
Weinstein was serving a 23-year sentence in upstate New York after being convicted of sexually assaulting 2 women. But more than 100 had come forward saying Weinstein abused his power to coerce them into unwanted sexual acts. He's behind bars where he belongs because he's a criminal. Among the silence breakers is Quebec actress Erica Rosenbaum. She was in her early 20s when she met Weinstein.
The legal system as it is just not built to convict. And so survivors go out on a limb and tell their stories and re-traumatize themselves for the sake of these trials, and then something like this happens.
The district attorney has vowed to do everything possible to retry the case, but women's groups worry some survivors may be discouraged, re-traumatized by the decision. Still, they say this is not a blow to the Me Too movement, but another clarion call. In 2017, survivors all around the world said, "Me too, this happened to me." And it opened a door on understanding sexual violence across all sectors. Despite this decision, Weinstein is not a free man. He was convicted in a separate case of rape at a Beverly Hills hotel and is expected to go serve his sentence in California next. Omar.
Genevieve, thanks. Justices at the U.S. Supreme Court spent nearly 3 hours today in a hearing that will ultimately decide whether a former American president is immune from federal prosecution over acts while in office and whether a trial can take place before the November election. That case, as Donald Trump's hush money trial, resumed in New York today. Here's CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Melvin.
In New York, it was candidate Donald Trump out campaigning before returning to court as a criminal defendant in an historic hush money trial.
I think that the Supreme Court has a very important argument before it today. I would love to have been there.
Trump would rather be at the high court where protesters gathered, and Trump's legal team argued that the former president should have absolute immunity from federal charges that he plotted to overturn the 2020 election, culminating in the January 6th Capitol attack. The liberal judges seem skeptical.
If the potential for criminal liability is taken off the table, wouldn't there be a significant risk that future presidents would be emboldened to commit crimes with abandon while they're in office?
But the conservative justices, 3 appointed by Trump, seemed open to some form of immunity, fearing future presidents could be hounded by politically motivated prosecutions.
This case has huge implications for the presidency, for the future of the presidency, for the future of the country, in my view.
As the justices wrestled with presidential immunity that lower courts have already rejected, Trump was listening to his old friend David Pecker, a former tabloid publisher, describing their catch-and-kill scheme. Detailing the payoff to Playboy playmate Karen McDougal to buy and bury a year-long alleged affair, Pecker testified, "We didn't want the story to embarrass Mr. Trump or hurt the campaign." But Pecker wanted nothing to do with porn star Stormy Daniels. "I'm not a bank," Pecker said, and told Trump and his fixer Michael Cohen to buy Stormy's silence just weeks before the election. Trump is charged with falsifying business documents to illegally influence the 2016 election.
The High Court will take months to decide if Trump has immunity or can be prosecuted. Any delay is a win for Trump, likely putting off his January 6th criminal trial until after Americans vote. Omar?
Joy Melvin in Washington. The University of Southern California has canceled its main graduation ceremony in a major fallout of the flaring unrest across American college campuses over the conflict in the Middle East. There were more violent confrontations from coast to coast today. At Emory University in Atlanta, police were filmed using a taser on a handcuffed man.
What are you doing?
In Texas, police brought in horses to tame the crowd, officers grabbing this news camera person and thrusting him to the ground. And at the epicenter of the protests, students camped out at Columbia are nearing a 4 a.m. deadline to disperse or be forced out. Most protesters are calling for an end to the war and for their universities to cut ties with companies linked to Israel.
It makes me feel threatened and intimidated, and I think that the anti-Semitic rhetoric must be condemned.
One father joined his daughter in protest.
I will be the happiest daddy if she's doing the right thing, and I know she's doing the right thing.
A week since protests escalated, school administrations have largely failed to diffuse tensions. And heated moments in the Ontario legislature today over a piece of clothing that has come to symbolize solidarity with Palestinians.
Sarah Jama, you are named. You must leave the chamber.
An independent lawmaker was expelled for the day for refusing to remove her keffiyeh, a scarf typically worn in Arab cultures that is now banned in the provincial legislature.
The rules very specifically apply to anybody speaking up against genocide, against anti-Palestinian racism.
Premier Doug Ford and all of Ontario's political leaders have called the policy divisive and have urged the Speaker to reconsider it. More details today on the parts and labor involved in a multi-billion-dollar deal with one of the world's largest automakers. Honda is set to build an electric vehicle battery plant in Ontario, the third to do so in the province, along with Volkswagen and Stellantis. CTV's Adrian Gobriel digs into how many jobs will be created and how much they will cost.
Hey, there we go, now that's green. Political handiwork and plenty of glad handing were on full display today, as both Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Ontario Premier Doug Ford popped the hood on their historic deal with Honda.
We're building the careers of the future. Our economic policies, including our climate policies, are attracting global investors.
And it's a substantial investment. Honda's expenditure totals $15 billion. Ottawa has pledged $2.5 billion in tax credits, while Ontario is committing $2.5 billion in incentives, which will in part build a new electric vehicle manufacturing plant and an EV battery facility here in Alliston, Ontario, while creating Canada's first comprehensive electric vehicle supply chain. As for how many jobs this public investment will create, when pressed by journalists today, the Prime Minister was no longer in the mood for pleasantries.
If you're not going to listen to the answer by saying 1,000 jobs created, then there's nothing we can do for you.
Ottawa does claim that the 2 new Alliston plants will create 1,000 positions, though the combined $5 billion government investment also includes 2 other yet-to-be-announced Honda facilities. The details remain a tightly guarded secret.
We don't know how many jobs just yet, and we don't know exactly where. Well, we do, and stay tuned.
My question is for anyone who can answer it clearly. How much is the government paying for each of those jobs through the tax credits and the deal that is on the table?
This is generational. This is decades and decades down the road. What price do you put on that?
While there wasn't a politician in the plant today who could answer that question clearly, industry leaders believe that following the Honda deal, Canada will now face even stiffer global competition in the race to lure other auto giants.
This is a highly competitive environment. I expect the Americans to respond and other jurisdictions to respond by adjusting what they offer.
As for the EV supply chain tax credit being offered to Honda by Ottawa, it was just announced in the latest federal budgets, and that has yet to pass through Parliament. Omar.
Adrian Gobriel in Alliston, Ontario. We are learning tonight the body of a Montreal man who died while on vacation in Cuba last month was mistakenly sent to Russia. The family of Faraj Jarjour says they have received proof from the federal government after the wrong body was sent back to Montreal last week. Jarjour's daughter still processing the ordeal.
Je sais pas si je suis content qu'on a trouvé, et si je suis comme triste qu'il est pas là encore. C'est mélangé, on est mélangé. En même temps, on est fatigué, on veut tout ce qui se passe vite, mais On n'a pas de choix.
Cuba has refunded the Jarjour family $10,000 paid to repatriate their father. They still don't know when he will be returned home. Two 14-year-olds have been charged with second-degree murder over the stabbing death of another teen in Halifax.
We certainly hope that, this does bring some measure of comfort to the family and the community.
The 16-year-old victim was killed at a shopping center on Monday. He and his family had come to Canada fleeing the war in Syria. Police believe the killing was not a random act and are now investigating the relationship between the victim and the accused. And police are on the hunt for a killer in Metro Vancouver. 2 knife attacks in 48 hours in one of the region's best-loved tourist spots has left people on edge. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson on the tragedy and the investigation.
It's a beautiful seaside spot known for its picturesque pier and for being safe, but 2 attacks in 2 days have made for a terrifying wake-up call in White Rock.
Well, I've lived here for 45 years, so I was completely shocked.
The latest, Tuesday night at the waterfront, 28-year-old Kulwinder Sohi was sitting near the beach when he was stabbed and couldn't be saved. We spoke with his roommate today.
The guy came from the back, punched him on the head, and stabbed him in the chest. If it's a public place, if we are not safe on the public space, then where are we safe? In our homes? Like, should we just not leave our homes?
2 days earlier, a young married couple were sitting on a bench nearby when a stranger came up behind them and stabbed Manpreet Kaur's husband in the neck.
Maybe it's a God's grace that he's alive, he's surviving, he's with me.
As they hunt for a killer, police say they don't know at this point if the attacks are random or whether someone could be targeting the South Asian community, but they insist the city is safe.
I don't think that we're in a situation where people have to dramatically alter their lives. I would be walking with my family as per normal. I would allow my mother to walk as per normal in the area.
For now, officers have increased patrols along the White Rock waterfront as people in the area anxiously await any word of an arrest. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
A moment of silence tonight for hockey fans from British Columbia to Newfoundland. Legendary broadcaster Bob Cole has died at the age of 90. The St. John's native narrated some of the most memorable hockey nights in Canada. CTV's Garrett Barry has the play-by-play on his life and legacy.
He was the voice of hockey for generations. In a play-by-play career that spanned 50 years, Bob Cole's colorful prose lifted the action off of the ice and into the homes of millions.
They're going home! Yeah, they're going home!
Generations of Canadians today remember their favorite hockey moments, their Saturday nights, with Bob Cole's distinctive voice.
I can still hear his voice now on Hockey Night in Canada. I'm sure everybody across Canada can.
And in Newfoundland and Labrador, he was one of our own, a link to Canada's game in a small province that doesn't often see itself in the starting lineup.
Hearing him call games allowed us to dream, allowed us to realize that we could achieve great heights because you could hear it, you could see him, you could feel it.
Born in 1933, Cole started as a radio DJ at a local station in St. John's. But he got a big break in '56 when he met with Foster Hewitt and learned some finer points of sports broadcasting. He called his first hockey games on the radio, then moved to television. In 1996, he was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. His professionalism earned him the respect of players and coaches.
I always had a great rapport with Bob and just had absolutely nothing but respect for him, so the hockey world lost a real good human being today.
If you were lucky enough to have Bob Cole voice your highlights, it stuck with you forever.
And when you're an Ontario kid, it's pretty special when those guys are calling your name out there.
His career continued until 2019 when he was given a send-off by fans in Montreal.
It's been a pleasure. Gonna miss this, let me tell you that, for sure.
Garrett Barry, CTV News, St. John's.
Coming up, the Capital Gains Crunch on cottagers.
They're pretty upset right now.
Middle-class Canadians speak out against Trudeau's new tax. Plus, fast food hits the big stage. More pushback on the federal government's capital gains tax changes, this time from cottage owners, who some realtors say are racing to sell before the new rules come into effect on June 25th. Here's an example of the difference. Assuming the cottage is not your primary residence, if you bought it for $250,000 and sold it for $750,000, that's a $500,000 profit, and you'd owe $250,000 in taxes. But after June 25th, you would owe more than $291,000 in taxes. CTV's Heather Wright on the tax change aimed at the wealthy that some say could end up impacting the middle class.
Add cottagers to the list of Canadians disappointed with the federal budget and the changes being made around capital gains.
Most of the calls that I'm getting are from people that want to hand their cottages down as opposed to sell them. They're pretty upset right now.
Many are worried they won't be able to afford the increased tax bill that will come when the family cottage is passed down.
What it's affecting is 99% of average Canadians that have inherited a cottage from their parents or have purchased one and are simply trying to maintain a recreational home.
Right now, only 50% of capital gains are taxable. The budget proposes to increase that to 2/3 of a capital gain above $250,000. Children inheriting even a modest family cottage will now have to pay even more just to keep it.
The reality is that fewer cottages will be maintained by ordinary middle-class Canadians.
The government says these changes, which impact anyone selling property, stocks, or mutual funds, for example, are aimed at fairness and will generate billions of dollars in much-needed new revenue while impacting only a small percentage of the population.
Most Canadians pay nothing, and these additional revenues that are being paid really just help to level the playing field and eliminate a problem where some high-income families right now are not paying their fair tax rates.
But doctors, tech leaders, and entrepreneurs have all been speaking out, worried it will stifle investment and reduce productivity.
In a moment where productivity is a real issue, where growth is a real issue, whereas we as Canadians are struggling to be productive, we're seeing the government move on measures to make investment and investing in our future more expensive.
These changes will come into effect at the end of June. Many tax experts say they are being inundated with calls from clients, and some are urging the government to delay the changes and give people more time to prepare. Omar.
All right, Heather, thanks. Still ahead. Basically, we're not being able to walk very far at all. The first of its kind surgery with a robot assist. More than 100 pilot whales have been rescued from a beach after a mass stranding in Western Australia. The animals became stuck in shallow waters today. Wildlife officers working desperately to rescue them. Most made it back out to the ocean, but sadly, 29 could not be saved. Marine officials are now monitoring the pods to ensure they don't return to shore. A pioneering Canadian medical first has made walking pain-free possible for a London, Ontario man.
Basically went from not being able to walk very far at all to having my life back.
Dave Mine is the first Canadian to receive a robotic-assisted surgery on his spine. The 57-year-old had extreme pain in his lower back and right leg when he opted for the procedure. He was home within days and is thankful for the freedom he has regained.
From putting on your socks to, leaning over the sink to brush your teeth.
The surgery was in February, and Mine will remain in recovery for a few more months. An estimated 1 in 5 Canadians suffers from chronic back pain. After the break.
There couldn't be anything more Canadian.
A new musical is brewing, courtesy of a Canadian coffee icon. A familiar coffee chain is officially entering show business with a new musical focused on one of its staple sweets. It launches in June and is hoping to serve up the success from the Canadian smash hit Come From Away. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver has the story.
Can I do a big box of Timbits, please?
Yes, like 10, 20, or 50?
One of Canada's favorite sweet snacks is about to take a bite out of Broadway. And its producers promise that in just a few short months, the last Timbit will have fans humming.
It's going to be what, Timbits running around on the stage or stuff? I don't know.
I could see a really dramatic, climactic ending where it finally gets eaten. And I think that'd be about it. That'd be neat.
Whether the last Timbit gets eaten is still a surprise. But despite its name, the musical's focus isn't so much on the treat, but rather on the community created at Timmy's, the heart of many Canadian towns.
We at first thought it was a little outlandish, but very soon in conversation we realized, Tim's is a pretty iconic part of most Canadians' lives, and it accompanies usually huge moments in a life.
The production is loosely based on a dangerous winter whiteout that hit Sarnia, Ontario in 2010, stranding drivers on highways and one group of strangers inside a Tim Hortons. That experience, which includes the deep desire for a birthday Timbit, is all the way for Tim Hortons to mark its 60th birthday.
This made total sense to me to celebrate this iconic brand with a musical that takes place in the Tim Hortons. There couldn't be anything more Canadian.
While much about the musical remains a secret, fans are being promised a mix of humor and heart.
We hope it'll surprise people and ultimately be kind of moving because it's about the power of community, which I think we can all connect to and find a way to sing about.
The uniquely Canadian content hits a Toronto stage in June. Annie Bergeron-Oliver, CTV News, Ottawa.
And that's a snapshot of this Thursday. Heather is here tomorrow for all of us at CTV National.
It's time for Seen and Unseen, where we reveal the stories behind the headlines. For that, we turn to Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo. All right, Raymond, I was heartened to see that Patrick Mahomes has joined The Rock, not endorsing anyone this presidential season. Love it.
Well, not everyone got the memo, Laura. In fact, some big names have become practical surrogates for the Biden campaign. People like John Legend and Michael Douglas.
Choice is very clear. There's a lot being said about all these other things. Both of them are old, but one of them is a really decent man who's done a lot to improve lives in this country, and that's Joe Biden.
You and Biden are about the same age. Are you one of those people who wished he had bowed out, let the field choose somebody else?
I think that I walk a little similar to him, and the people that I've talked to and everybody that I have say he's as sharp as a tack. He's fine.
He's as sharp as a tack. Look, not to fact check the All-Star Biden Defense League, Laura, but this was Joe Biden earlier at an Earth Day event. I guess it depends on the tack you use for comparison. Watch.
I've seen the devastating toll of climate firsthand. I think about climate, when I think about it, I think not only about health and safety, but I think about jobs. We issued new standards for chemical plants that emit toxic pollution. Now, it's candy. It affected Delaware. We had the highest cancer rate in the 1970s of any state in the nation. And guess what? A lot of us, from me included, ended up with bronchial asthma.
What did he almost say there, Laura? Bronchial cancer? What was that? I mean, this is from the man that brought you Uncle Boise's, cuisine last week, cannibal cuisine. That story didn't pan out either. He just makes this stuff up. But to say that this is sharp as a tack, I'd hate to see a dull one.
Well, Michael Douglas is quite compelling when he offers secondhand observations as well. People I know who spend time with him say, he's the, okay, let's spend some time with him and then at least come out after spending your own time with him and say something.
Plausible deniability, Laura. That's smart. Look, one celebrity who is not out hitting the campaign trail like the rest for Joe Biden is Michelle Obama. But she is trying to generate some excitement by engaging the little people with an all-new Target run.
I heard my paperback is out and it's in Target. So we are going to go undercover because I have not seen my book actually in a Target store. So we're going to try to do this little key. Let's see how it goes. Should I do a reading here? Bring your hand, sign a few different meetings. Just send information. Check. See you guys later.
Laura, this is like George H.W. Bush going to the grocery store. No one buys this. And I love how, aside from her staff, she had no interaction with anyone at Target. The razzle-dazzle is kind of wearing thin at this point. Nobody cares.
She looks really thin. She looks pretty good, I think. But Raymond, I think she tried to do this before. Didn't she try to go? During when she was first lady, she went to, I think it was a Target or Walmart. I can't remember what store, but she kind of did this routine before. Was it Target? So yeah, she likes to promote Target. But look, she'll send. I guess she'll sell a ton of books. There's people still reading books.
Well, it's remarkable to me that she's not out there beating the drum for Biden. Usually Michelle is in the vanguard. Now the Obamas are hanging back. I think they see the same handwriting on the wall, The Rock and others. And Laura, there is one celebrity that Team Biden is hoping will declare for Joe, the one, Taylor Swift. But despite her endorsement last time, maybe she's thinking she should have said no. She focused on her new album, which Paste magazine just panned. Did you see that?
Well, I don't read Paste, but some of the young kids, Raymond, my daughter's age, they love Taylor Swift, but they don't love necessarily her new review. But that was brutal, her new album. They gave the Tortured Poets Department a 3.6 out of 10, claiming that Swift is in her 30s. It sounds like she's infantilizing her own audience more than ever before.
Yeah, there was a pretty brutal takedown. What's curious, Laura, the editor's note of this Paste magazine, they decided to suppress the author's byline, fearing for the safety of the staff. Apparently this guy, some day before, one of the earlier albums had reviewed her, and the Swifties went crazy. Who knew that a review of a Taylor Swift album would become the 2024 Charlie Hebdo? But here we are. The writers are all in hiding.
Well, it's like 40, wasn't it like 40 songs on the album or 35 songs? All right, and now the University of South Florida, Raymond, has announced it's launching a new English class devoted to the study of Taylor Swift.
It's amazing to me, Laura. They're late in the game, actually. 4 other universities already beat them to the punch, including Harvard. So I'm glad the University of Southern Florida is catching up. But look, there's no Taylor Swift's culture.
Yeah, we're out of time.
Like her lyrics or not.
We're out of time, Raymond.
Mentioned a London pub, and the Swifties packed it.
Yeah. Well, Raymond, this is another black eye for the English degrees out there.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Woodman. Have a good life.